Dr. Cooper, in talking about overall structured viral communications, you explained that structured viral communications is where the sweet spot is. Why do you say that?
Well, for the 20th century, the industrial production of content was essentially a one-to-many model, right? The centralized company produced stuff and pushed it out to the audience or the consumer. The internet has opened up the possibility of the many-to-many model. Anybody talks to anybody. We've got billions of conversations going on out there. But it turns out that, you know, that chaos out there is not very focused. It's not clear, as I like to say, how you win friends, influence people, and make a little money in that space that's just completely scattered. And it turns out that a lot of the successful institutional, organizational operations try to blend the freedom of viral communications at the periphery with some structure from the center, oriented around tasks. Light-handed, there's no heavy-handed command and control, there's no orders, but there's support, there's suggestions, there's resources, and so it's that middle ground where you find a way to let people do their own thing, but get them to do the thing that, you know, is really helping the collectivity, whether it's making money or running a political campaign.
You illustrated with the music and newspaper industries, one of the takeaways I seem to get was that either you as an industry can change with the technology, or the technology will eventually go ahead and change it for you. Where do you see this happening next, as you illustrated with music and newspapers? Where would you see this happening in other place?
Well, it's happening every place. I mean, in a certain sense, the video business is now about to feel it. The nature of the content may dictate the speed with which it happens, because video content tends to be richer, higher bandwidth, a variety of things, but it is definitely happening there. It happens with the distribution of every product and commodity. It happened in contact lenses, where people started selling contact lenses over the internet. It could well happen with automobiles, where the franchise dealerships will disappear or shrink dramatically. That's happened in America. People never realized that Toyota came late and had half the number of dealerships that the Americans did. It was a legacy of the past. So the free flow of information, if you think about a lot of the value of the structure of retail was to get information. Well, in the environment, there is infinite quantities of information. Which industries will be completely undone by it, that's difficult to predict. Every industry that's based in physical distribution will be impacted by it.
So you, as you said earlier, it's hard to make money, easy to make friends, but time will tell how it influences people. What kind of time are we looking at? Will this be a lot of trial and error in this space, or how do you foresee it turning out? Generational?
If you think about the internet in election campaigns, from '96, where a few people put up websites, to 2004, where the Dean campaign almost grabbed the genie with the tail, to the Obama campaign, where there was an immense amount of structured viral communications, and you can argue he would have won anyway, but he clearly brought a series of resources to the table through this approach that swamped anything else. It will happen very quickly, I think. So it's not going to be decades. It will be each election cycle will reveal more and more impact. And the other thing about elections is, of course, they're very targeted undertakings. They're very task-oriented, and so they may be particularly susceptible to being altered by efforts to really try and find that sweet spot between structure and viral.
Do you see both political parties being able to have the same tenable hold on this? You've spoken about Howard Dean and Barack Obama, but obviously the party out of power now, the Republican Party, would like to grab this in their own.
I have one table I did a few years ago, which compared what I call D-mail and email. Because let's be clear, the Republicans mastered direct mail much earlier than the Democrats did. And actually, the Democrats may never have quite captured direct mail as well as the Republicans did. The reverse seems to have happened with the email part, the electronic, the internet part. Will they catch up? Certainly they'll catch up. But it also depends, in a certain sense, on the nature of your base. If you think about the Democratic Party as oriented more to the bottom half of the income distribution than the Republican Party, on the one hand, it may be easier to collect lots of small donations from that target audience than for the Republicans, who are oriented in fundraising to a different income segment. So I think they'll certainly catch up. People will certainly develop models. I think one of the really interesting models from the last campaign were the truth squads that were developed. So to virally respond to what were deemed to be unfair negative advertising seems to have really very quickly driven that advertising off the air very quickly, controlled it in cyberspace. So I think both parties will use it, and I think it will play a bigger and bigger part as we go forward.
How can structured viral communication help enforce regulation, at the same time reducing heavy-handed regulation?
Well, I think that the fact that if you think about some of the classic examples of spreading across a very large base of people, open source, for instance, or again, the Obama campaign, is the idea of with enough eyeballs, every bug is simple, right? With enough eyeballs, abusive conduct is going to be revealed. And so if you have an organization a structure that says, here's a place where you can complain about some sort of abuse that is not in the public interest, we may not need as much of the auditors and the government and the heavy hand. What we need is the fact that some things are considered to be illegal, but I don't need an army of auditors to go out and find it. I can do crowdsourcing to police it. And that would change the tone and quality of the relationship between people and government. Because now, in a certain sense, the people are actually the government. They're looking around for these abuses. And we've seen, some classic examples of a citizen in a crowd capturing a scene, putting it on the web, and ending a political career. That's sort of, but that's a random event. When it comes to regulating in industry, maybe in fact we need some structure to it, and needs to be tied to a proceeding in which someone can file a complaint. The government doesn't have to spend all that time looking at complaints and auditing.
Great. Thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.